This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Mike Sedita.
Hello out there. Welcome to episode 170 of the Good Neighbor Podcast. I am your host, Mike Sedita, and today we're joined by the owner of Engage Mold Solutions, and that's Jorge Ubieta. Jorge, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for being on the Good Neighbor Podcast. Just to give you a little update on what we are, what we do, why we do what we do. The Good Neighbor Podcast was started back in 2020 during COVID as a way for business owners to get their message, what they're doing, things they have going on in the community out to people while still being socially distant. And over the last 4 years, we are now a national brand. We have Good Neighbor Podcasts in Denver and Philadelphia and everywhere in between across the United States. I'm lucky enough to be the person here in Tampa that gets to speak to folks like you. So with that said, first, tell us a little bit about Engage Mold Solutions.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. My name is Jorge, and I'm the owner of Engage Mold Solutions, as you mentioned. We are state-certified mold assessors. We focus mostly on indoor air quality assessments, mold testing, VOC testing, bacteria testing, and we basically help homeowners, creating practical solutions for their indoor air quality problems and their mold problems.
So when do you normally come in? Like if there's a real estate transaction, are you guys coming in that? Like if the inspector finds something, then you're coming in to mitigate it? Or are you generally called, like someone lives in a house for a while and they're just starting to smell that funky smell and they're like, they need to call you to help, bring it down?
Well, actually, a little bit of both. Yeah, we do help out a lot of real estate professionals with real estate transactions. We are called either during the inspection time, or also when if there's a home inspector involved in the transaction, if they deem it necessary to have a mold assessment done, that's where we come in. We also, like you mentioned, we do help out homeowners that are having problems either at home or at their businesses with air quality problems. Like you said, if especially after COVID, as you know, a lot of people spend a lot of time at home. So the more time you spend at home, the more you start to figure out what your air quality is like. And that's, we do help out a lot of homeowners in that sense. We also help out homeowners with, water intrusion problems, water ingress, either insurance claims or just, issues such as plumbing, roofing leaks. We do a little bit of that. We also do a lot of volatile organic compound testing. In that sense, it's testing is a different type of testing we offer, not necessarily mold, but also for off-gassing of building materials. So we help out a lot of homeowners after remodeling to see if the building materials that, such as, kitchen cabinets and things like that. So it's more of an off-gassing testing.
All right, wait. So you dropped a whole bunch of stuff there. So we got to kind of back up. First off, where's your office located? Where do you have a shop?
So we're located in Tampa. We don't actually have a brick and mortar. We're a mobile unit. So we do testing mostly on homes and commercial buildings.
And that was my next question. So if you had to put a percentage on it, what percentage of your business is commercial versus residential?
I'll say about 80% residential, 20% commercial.
And you talked about air quality and some of the other stuff you do. Like if someone has a leak, that creates the mold. I get how all those components play into it. But you did say something about organic compound testing. Is that when somebody puts, like you said, cabinets in their house and there's new material in there, that the material hasn't been, I don't want to say washed, but hasn't been cleaned properly, that it would have some of that organic compound test requirements?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. It's called VOC. So it's volatile organic compounds. So that's more of an off-gassing test. Just for example, if you're, for example, getting a new roof in your home, the underlayment of the roof, if it's, for example, a modified bitumen layer, that creates, off gas. It creates gases that could leak into your building envelope. So that's a test that we do to basically detect that. So it works the same way with, like I said, flooring, kitchen cabinets. There are, brand new. Depending on the materials that they use, they could be off-gassing certain things inside your building envelope.
Is there something that triggers it? Like, for example, say I put a new roof on my house and they have that inside layer in there. Is it once that roof is sealed onto the house that there's no way for it to escape, that it just kind of builds up and releases back into the home?
Correct.
And does that dissipate over time? Like if I did nothing and just left my doors and windows open for a month straight, does it dissipate, or is it one of those things that just kind of lingers because there really is no place for it to go?
Well, that's a good question. So depending on the material, it could it's something that dissipates over time. Usually can take anywhere between 5 to 6 months for something like a roofing membrane to dissipate. There are other things you can do to help with that, like such as negative pressure, or using air filtration devices and creating negative pressure to suck all that stuff out of the envelope.
Yeah.
But yeah, they should dissipate over a period of time.
And then one other question I had before we move on is like your service area. I mean, you kind of have remote services. So do you service Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas, or do you not go over the bridges into Pinellas? Do you go to Polk County? Like, what is your service footprint of where you guys work?
Yeah, so we service the entire state. We have technicians in the East Coast that service anywhere from Jacksonville to about Port St. Lucie. And I take care of the areas anywhere between, well, obviously the Tri-County area, but all the way down to Naples.
Wow.
And we have another technician down in South Florida that takes care of the Miami, Broward, Palm Beach area. So we do service the whole state. So it's
so let me ask you. Do you use, okay, I know you when you're going in, I mean, I don't know, I'm asking, when you go into a job and you need to do some sort of air purification, I'm assuming you have like industrial stuff. I mean, every time I hear about mold, all I hear people say is just spray some Clorox on it. Just spray some Clorox on it. I'm assuming you have some industrial equipment that you use, but my question is for the garden variety stuff, like these air purifiers that people have in houses. Like I'm literally looking at one behind my camera here. Is there ones that are better than others? Is there ones that have like charcoal or something? Like, does that stuff work? Does it legitimately work to help with the air quality? Or once you get something in there, like a contaminant like you're talking about, there's no place to go but have an industrial product come in and take it out?
Yeah. So I just want to make the distinction that especially, here in Florida, we do mostly focus on the testing part, and then the abatement or the remediation part is done by a third party, just to avoid conflict of interest. So we can only serve as the assessor's capacity in each job. We are licensed remediators as well, but mostly it's just for knowledge, because we create the protocols for the mold remediation companies to do the abatement or the mold remediation or cleanup. So that's the conflict.
So let me just back up so I understand it correctly. So the conflict of interest really is you don't walk into somebody's house and say, yeah, you have a boatload of mold, let me charge you X to fix it. It's we do the assessment and then somebody else comes in and actually does the process.
Correct. You're right. Mm-hmm.
And then do you work with a team? Like when you go and do the assessment, do you say to the homeowner, hey, look, I have 3 people that do good work. You contact any one of the 3 and make it, or you're not even able to make those recommendations, because would that be a conflict? I don't know.
Yeah, well, we do. We can always recommend, companies that do work to the homeowners, but ultimately they're the ones that make the decision. We're not involved in that decision making per se. Like I said, we only do the testing part of it, create the protocols for those companies to come in and do the abatement. So. Yeah, it's, just like you mentioned, the conflict of interest, it's where, I can come into a house and say, hey, you do have mold and this is how much it will cost. So that's why there's two different licensing for that. There's the assessors and the remediators. So yeah, it always has to be done by a third party.
So who are some of your biggest referral partners? I would think would be like realtors, public adjusters are probably a big one. And then your partners on the other side, the people who are doing the remediation. Is that your main group of people in your sphere that you work with?
That's correct. Yeah, we work with a lot of public adjusters in the area, not just here, but in all over the state. I do come from an insurance background, so we work well with public adjusters, restoration companies. Very good referral partners are home inspectors, real estate professionals, whether realtors or brokers. It's pretty much our sphere. Correct, you're correct.
So let me ask you this. I mean, understanding now more about what you guys do on a granular level, you personally, you said you come from an insurance background. Was your background, I mean, like, how did you get to here? Was your background, you were an insurance adjuster and said, wow, there's really a need to make sure this is getting done right, and you decided to go on to this? How do you get from growing up as, I mean, I'm sure as a young man, you weren't sitting around going, I really want to help with air quality in people's homes. You probably wanted to be a football player or a fireman or something like that. So how do you get to this point?
Yeah, so I was an insurance adjuster for many years. I'm still a licensed adjuster. Full transparency. I just don't really practice on the front end. But that's what we work a lot with public adjusters, because I did see at that point a need for to work a need to work together, only to make sure that you maximize your policy and the settlements you get for your clients as an adjuster. So we help out in that sense to make sure that whenever there's a water loss or either even a fire loss or any kind of weather event such as a hurricane or a hailstorm, that if there is any water ingress in the property, that public adjusters maximize that by making sure that their mold coverage it's activated by the testing, if there is anything to be worried about. But mostly water ingress and the water intrusion claims at some point will warrant some mold testing, just to make sure.
Well, I mean, I would think, considering the majority of the state of Florida is below sea level, there's quite a bit of water ingress along most properties. It's just a matter of, I guess, how intrusive it is. I would think. Do what is one of the things you run into when you're talking to people where they have a misconception about what you do? Do they think you're going to come in and remediate also, where you have to correct them, or do they just not quite understand what types of mold there are? Because there are a couple different types of molds. So I'm not saying any of it's good, but some is much worse than others. I mean, where do you run into this stuff where you're educating the consumers more than anything else?
Well, actually, pretty much, I would say every day. There's about 144,000 different types of mold, and there's new ones being studied, pretty much daily. So what we do is we try to make a distinction between hydrophilic molds, which are waterborne or water-created molds, which are most dangerous in my opinion. And just what a regular environmental or a regular fungi ecology is at your home. We live in Florida, so just by opening the door, you're going to cross-contaminate. You're going to allow some of those spores into your home. But as long as you're not colonizing those inside your building envelope, then it's the counts or the levels could be different at any given day. But what we're trying to basically is get to the bottom of any kind of like I said, hydrophilic mold spores or water created molds that need a lot of water to survive, to feed off of on the substrates or the building materials. Those are the most dangerous.
So that kind of leads me into my question. Is there 144,000 different strands of mold? What is the one mold? I mean, I always hear black mold. What is the one mold that if you see it, smell it, whatever it is, you need to call you guys right away, or call somebody right away, or dump a gallon of Clorox on it? What's the one that's the worst?
Right. So what people consider black mold, there's a lot of different mold spores are black in color, but the most famous or the most infamous, I would say, is called Stachybotrys, which is one of the most dangerous. There are other molds that are also just as dangerous, in my opinion. It's about 4 or 5 of them that are that could be just as devastating as that one. It is a very hydrophilic mold. So to answer your question, there's nothing that's across the board that says, hey, these are the levels are allowed. There's a lot of literature out there, but nothing really across the board. There's no statute or there's no law that says, hey, these are the amounts of spores that you could have. There's a lot of different opinions out there. But like you said, there's about 5 of them that are considered target. The EPA has some language on that. NORMI, which is the National Organization of Mold Inspectors and Remediators, they have some papers on that. So we do adhere to those. Stachybotrys is like the most infamous one. I would say it's one that we definitely don't want to see in any building envelope. So
what I was going to ask you is, all right, so Stachybotrys, if it's in my home, what are generally the effects on a person? Is it just tough breathing? Is it cause infection? Does the mold get in people's lungs and cause like kind of ripping in the lungs? What is the negative side effect of having it in there?
Yeah, so there's definitely an allergen. There's different types of symptoms. But I would say that one in particular, it creates what's called a secondary compound, which is it's called a mycotoxin, which is just to put it in simple terms, it's kind of like a poisonous gas. So it creates that kind of moldy,
kind of like a carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide.
Right, kind of like a moldy odor and that's when there's a particular odor or a strong odor, that more than likely it's created by a mycotoxin. So mold spores are live colonies, the live organisms. So when they feel like they're being attacked, they're gonna produce something to kind of defend themselves. So to bring it back real quick, what you mentioned about spraying like Clorox or bleach or things like that. We usually don't recommend to do that. Sodium hypochlorite, it is used to sanitize, but the bleach you buy at the store is it's not really the ideal one. I would say if you do encounter some type of microbial growth at home, before spraying it with anything, what you want to do is to stabilize the environment and make sure that you create a containment on the negative pressure. So that's why a professional is going to come into play. If you do find if you absolutely need to do something, that I would probably recommend to do maybe like a 60-40 solution of vinegar and warm water.
Okay.
But not the Clorox or the bleach from the store. When you spray that, you create mechanical agitation, and once those spores are exposed to that, then you can cross-contaminate. Just because you have spores on a surface doesn't necessarily mean that they're aerosolized. So by spraying or by giving it any mechanical agitation or putting fans to dry it or something like that, it could be more detrimental in that sense.
So people listening to this, then don't go spraying Clorox bleach on it. You need to get like a white vinegar with some water and cut a solution together. That will be more effective in just knocking it down a little bit until you can get it totally remediated.
Yeah, so if it's absolutely necessary, if you have to do that, then if you want to clean it, or if it's just a small area, less than 10 square feet or something like that, if you absolutely need to, then yes, you do that. My recommendation would be to call a professional, either call an assessor like me to test it, and or mold remediation company or water restoration company to basically stabilize that environment by creating negative pressure or a containment.
So if you're going to see a ghost, you call Ghostbusters. If you see water, you're going to call Engage Mold Solutions. That's kind of the song doesn't sound good. So I will tell you, and this kind of leads into my next question, is I lived in a place at one point where there was a sort of like a water line, like not a permanent it might have been like a copper permanent water line in the wall, and it had a pinhole, like literally a pinhole that was just creating a mist. The mist didn't even look like liquid; it looked like gas because it was such a fine mist coming out. And when they finally came in and cut through the wall, they said it must have been going like that for a year. And it finally, the mold just all of a sudden went like from probably sitting there, and all of a sudden just, covered the entire lower part of this wall. With that being said, what is, like, you don't got to give a person's address. I'm not looking for that. But have you ever walked into a job and you were just like, oh, hell no, like this is bad. Like as soon as you walk in the door, you got to put on like the Breaking Bad, gear. So you're covering up. What's the worst you've ever seen?
Well, yeah, full PPA, definitely. Full PPE. I mean, I've worked several storms dating back to maybe 2014. I think the most devastating ones I've seen are probably Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Michael, and then this last one, Hurricane Ian. I've seen some things that. But back to what you were saying. Those very insidious leaks, like a small pinhole, maybe like a small leak on a dishwasher line or an ice maker line. Those are actually the most devastating ones. So it's something that's constantly leaking, or maybe it leaks and then it stops, and then it leaks and then it stops. So those are probably the most devastating ones.
It's like a breeding ground, right? Like it's literally just festering there.
Correct.
Slowly over time.
Yeah. So it's the spores have a constant source of water and a constant source of food on the substrate, meaning like on the drywall or the wood or whatever the building material is. So, like I mentioned earlier, those hydrophilic molds, they take a little bit longer to colonize. They can take, there's different opinions there, but I'll say anywhere from 7 to 12 days.
Wow.
Once they have that constant source of food, then those are what we call like the most devastating ones. So
yeah, I can tell you, I'm hoping the statute of limitations has run out. In 1986, I left some food in my locker in school, and it grew so much mold. Clearly I wasn't going to my locker frequently enough, but it grew so much mold that I just got another locker and had to have the janitorial staff come and clean it out. Like that type of gross, that's a totally different, that's like disgusting. That's not the mold we're talking about here. We're talking about water damage mold, where when Ian rolls in and the water rolls up 4 feet up the wall, there's no way to get that out. It's just in there, and you have to kind of gut those type of places.
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah. So water damage is a little tricky. You can get to it quick enough and be able to dry, all the substrates or the framing and things like that. If you get to it quick, you can dry it. In the case of a storm where you have standing water for a certain amount of days, most of those jobs turn from being what's called a dry out job to a mold remediation job.
Yeah.
So, it's tough, to dry certain, building structures after they've been, underwater for a certain amount of days. So
not to get dark, but like when you hear, because listen, no one wants like one person's pain to be like somebody else's pleasure, but when you hear they predict that this is going to be one of the largest storm seasons that we've had in 100 years in Florida, and like 30 names of hurricanes, they got them all planned out. When you hear that as a human being, you're like, oh my God, there's going to be devastation. But part of you as a business owner has to say, well, it's going to be a good year for us because we're going to have a lot of jobs to do. I mean, or no, does that not cross your mind? Because it would cross my mind. Maybe I'm just a terrible human being.
Yeah, no, it certainly does cross my mind. You're correct on that. I'm always a little bit torn because I've seen firsthand how families go through when they suffer something like that. That is something that nobody should experience.
Yeah.
But what I try to do mostly is just kind of get ready and be able to stay ready and kind of be ready to mobilize when I need to, because time is of the essence in those situations. and it's, I just get ready to help people in that sense. But yeah, I'm going to be honest. I say, hey, this is, I'm not going to have to worry about,
Put the kids through school. This summer is going to put the kids through school. They're going to have college education because we're going to be so busy.
Right, and I do have small children, so it's tough, because I sometimes I have to be away from home for days at a time. They're a little bit older now, but during Irma and Michael and those hurricanes, my kids were tiny, and sometimes I have to be away for for more than 3-5 days. It's tough, So I just at this point I have been getting some reports about this year. I've been talking to a lot of my partners, and it looks like it's going to be, very busy. I work with a lot of attorneys that do first party property, and help out homeowners with claims. So I just try to, I want to be ready when it hits.
So are you a one-man shop, or do you have other people that are going out and doing this with you are you just the man running all over the place?
So I take care of what's that I-4 corridor from, I want to say Lakeland all the way to the West Coast.
Okay.
And then my other technician is on the other on the East Coast. But whenever there's a storm, most of the time it's two of us at a time. We'll mobilize and get out there.
And is there a lot of competition? Is there a ton of other? I'm assuming there's got to be a bunch of other folks in this line of work in the area. Is it difficult to get in with the people where you're getting the business sent your way?
There's not a lot there. There's a few companies that since I've been in business since 2018. So there are some new ones. There are some that were here before me. I think with the rise of social media. There's a lot of companies that are great at doing social media, and they're great at creating content and things like that. I think there's work for everyone. Really, that's kind of always been my motto, and my mentor kind of taught me the same way. I do think that before you hire somebody, as always, especially here in Florida, it's just to, I just recommend to do a little bit of, making sure they're licensed and insured. Obviously, you can get something you can check with, DBPR and things like that, but also that they have the credentials and the training that you need for, to make sure that you're doing, justice to, to the homeowner. You got, have a fiduciary, obligation to the person that's paying you. So you have to make sure that you do your best. I gotta say, when I first got licensed, I had to do an apprenticeship. I had to basically have 4 years of experience to be able to get licensed.
Right.
So that's still the same, but at the same time, I've gone through a lot of different trainings and certifications. I'm fully certified through the IICRC, and there's a lot of training that you could do, not just your licensing programs here in Florida, because anybody, as if you're a realtor, you can just get if you get a realtor's license, doesn't mean that you know the business. You just
right.
or home inspector. So I'll say just somebody, if you're gonna hire somebody who has the not just license, and it's obviously licensed and insured, but also has some sort of credentials or any additional training. There's a lot of good training out there. A couple of national organizations that offer that. I'm always trying to obtain new ones. Whether it's water related or fire related. So yeah, I think also hire local. It's important. I've had the experience. There's a couple of companies that are great at doing TikTok videos and things like that, and I've been called to homes from homeowners that have paid thousands and thousands of dollars by hiring somebody that they found on Instagram or on TikTok from out of state. And you got to be really careful when you're hiring someone, especially or in an instance such as maybe if you're thinking about putting your house for sale.
Right, you want to make sure.
You want to make sure that you have to be really careful, because that could be detrimental if you hire somebody from another state that's gonna try to upsell you in a lot of things that you may not need. So I'll say hire local, somebody who you can call, and they can come back, they can assist you locally, not just because they have a good TikTok video or some good content. Just that is important nowadays, which I agree with and I'm aware of. But hire somebody local that you can trust and that you can make sure that you're that you can do some research on.
Perfect. So with that said, how do people get a hold of you? If they're going to call somebody local, you're local, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so we're on all the socials at Engage Mold Solutions. We can call our office, and then they can call me directly or find me on either on LinkedIn or any other socials. But I think the best is going through our office at the number that I gave you earlier, 813-575-4224. And we can get you on the schedule. We work pretty fast, and we got a quick turnaround. So folks, if you're listening to this and you are you're not sure, you have some stuff going on in the house and you're not sure what's going on, or you have a home inspection and you're trying to sell your house and they're telling you there's some issues and you need someone to come in and give you an impartial assessment of what's going on, you need to contact Engage Mold Solutions. Excuse me. You can contact Jorge, 813-575-4224. Jorge, thank you so much for being a good neighbor. Thank you so much for being on the Good Neighbor podcast. You have an amazing day. Thank you. You too.
Thanks for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Passcode. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnppasco.com. That's gnppasco.com or call 813-922-3610.